morning. Today we will discuss about the embedded firmware design and development. So, which will be our last topic of this fourth unit. So, uh, probably one more day is required to complete this topic. Today and the next class on Monday we'll finish the topic, and that we'll left with only last unit. So last unit is much simpler than all the units that what you have undergone. Yes, let me present my screen. I hope my screen is visible to all. Okay. The embedded firmware development, design and development. So this is once again from your textbook, that is prescribed textbook KV Shibu. The introduction to embedded systems, titled Introduction to Embedded Systems, and that chapter 9, and you can see this topic in page number 302 or 303, 302 I think. Okay. Uh, now, many a times we come across this word in previous units also, that is firmware kind of word. And now it is the time to understand for us, like, what is this firmware and why it is required in embedded systems, and how, if at all we want to develop the firmware, then how it is possible for development. Okay. Now, say embedded firmware is nothing but a small software ultimately. Okay. Either I can write that software or firmware in C programming or in assembly level instructions, using assembly instructions, because when when we talk about embedded hardwares, most of the times the embedded hardwares are controllers like 8051 controller, ARM processor or ARM controller, or PIC microcontroller, and so on and so forth. Now, when we want to write the embedded firmware, probably we restrict our programming for C programming, like high level programming language, or else I can go for assembly level language, so which is nothing but I need to write the firmware in terms of instruction set. That's it. Now, again, at the outset, it is very clear the embedded firmware is nothing but a small piece of code. It is nothing but a small piece of code. Now, why it is required and what is the importance of firmware, that we'll try to see a little bit of introduction about the firmware. Then we will go for design approaches of firmware. The embedded firmware is responsible for controlling the various peripherals of embedded hardware. Now, what do you mean by various peripherals? Peripherals of embedded systems, probably you learned this in a previous unit or in a unit 3, like the embedded firmware, the embedded hardware consists of peripherals like memory unit, ports, GPIO ports, and it will be consisting of some timer counters as a peripherals for this unit, right? So which means that, so ultimately this is a system on chip, what we call, and this is my controller, microcontroller. Okay. Now this controller will consist of many peripherals like memory, and this peripherals may be attached to the timer or counter, right? Or this peripherals are connected to communication protocols like I2C or UART, etc. So I'll just write here like I square C or I2C, or this is a communication channel. So all the time, most of the time, this is nothing but a like bi-directional. Now, in general, I call them as all of these as peripherals or input-output peripherals. Maybe even you can consider some sensors, right? Even sensors are also a part of I/O ports. Now, all these peripherals are to be controlled by the microcontroller itself. See, you don't write any particular. If I want to run a program, say for example, I am trying to write a simple microcontroller program where to sense the temperature sensor, and I want to transfer that sensor data to a LCD display. Right? You write a simple logic for this, and you ask them to communicate this through a communication channel called I2C. Let me assume whatever you sense the data from a temperature, that data will pass through the LCD display through a communication channel called I2C. Now, how it fetches the address of I2C, how it enables, first point is I need to enable the I2C, I need to enable the LCD, all these particular point, it has to be understood and pre-written, right? So probably I will be using the address of I2C, that's it. But how exactly the controller will communicate to I2C itself, not to any other peripherals which has been attached to a microcontroller, right? It will display onto the LCD screen itself, but not a 7-segment display. It will, so maybe even a 7-segment display may be connected to this, but it will not display, or it will not send the data to the 7-segment display. It will give the to LCD display itself. How come it is possible? There might be someone who control all these actions, right? And that person we call him as a firmware design, right? Where who is responsible for controlling the various peripherals that has been attached to embedded systems, right? So, and he is also responsible for generating the equivalent functional requirements, right? So this is the first and foremost importance of embedded firmware design. So I can call him as the master brain, right? Because he will be controlling the all the peripherals, and see, we ultimately enable those peripherals and we will be using those peripherals, that's it. But who is actually communicating to the peripherals and asking them to perform the job? It is firmware, hence we call him as a master brain. So this is one-time programming. What is that? So imparting the intelligence to the embedded system is nothing but I need to store some program. As I told you, this is nothing but a small piece of program that we try to write. So that's where we call them as a embedded firmware design engineers. We will be having a separate unit for these people. Right? See, the best example for more clear is, see, the moment I connect your laptop and there is a printer, right? The moment I connect HP laptop to HP printer, no need to install any other device drivers. Automatically there is a intelligence within the laptop itself to recognize the peripheral system is printer, and that too from the HP laser. If we have a different models like HP 1105 LaserJet model and so color printers, so automatically it recognizes which model it is. Now how come this is possible, right? So somewhere else intelligence already fed for your laptop, maybe through the OS or maybe through the hardware itself. Somewhere else the intelligence already present inside your laptop to recognize the peripheral device is a HP laser printer itself. Again, if you remove that printer and if you connect your USB cable like mobile phones through the USB cable, again it is very intelligent enough to recognize that peripheral device is some mobile phone, and it will also display which mobile phone it is. So that's the intelligence that we are trying to give. We are not doing any, see, earlier days, if I want to connect and if I want to use that, so we need to install a separate software called device driver software. Nowadays it is not happening, right? Automatically the system is getting recognized. Even if I want to use my CD drive will be there in my laptop or will be there in my CPU cabin, but I need to install the driver. For every driver we used to have, we had a collection of huge CDs. Whenever I want to use the relevant peripheral, so I need to give that program or I need to install that software, and software we call it as a device driver software. Now it is not so. Everything is permanently embedded or stored in a permanent memory called read-only memory, and they are not alterable. Definitely they cannot be alterable, because if I write a program to detect a printer, then it has to be remain same, right? I cannot change each and every time. So same thing, if I write a microcontroller is there, if I ask the microcontroller, say for example washing machine, so the moment I press the button called wash, it starts washing. Now how come it is possible? So there must be some non-alterable memory already. The non-alterable program is already present in my memory, right? So hence the firmware design or the firmware software is stored permanently in the ROM memory, and it cannot be used or it cannot be altered by the end user. Who is the end user? We and you are the end users, right? Or a common people are the end users. So the system developed by the embedded firmware design software engineers, that particular program is unalterable or non-alterable. So this point is clear for you now. Next, moving further, how we design the embedded firmware. Designing embedded firmware requires, see here the point to be noted. So particular embedded product, which product it is, like what, like various component like interfacing memory map details, IO port details, configuration, register details, various hardware chips used for some programming, etc, etc, etc. Now see, if I want to design a firmware, say for example I am trying to design a firmware for ARM processor, right? So if I'm trying to design a firmware for the ARM processor, but I need to, without understanding the architecture of the ARM processor and without understanding how many registers bit are there in the ARM processor, without understanding the memory details of the ARM processor, now it is not possible for any of the design embedded engineer to write a firmware program. So that's a very clear point in the fourth point. Okay, so either we will be using like a low level language or high level languages like C, C++, Java or any programming, but a programming has to be done with respect to a particular target hardware itself. Now the particular target hardware knowledge is required before I develop the firmware. So that's what the fourth point talk about. Now try to understand which are the different embedded firmware design approaches. There are two types mainly, two basic approaches in designing embedded firmware. So one is conventional procedure based firmware design, which we here onwards we call it as a SOUP model. One is super loop model and another one is embedded operating system, OS based design. One is conventional procedural based firmware design, that is super loop model, and the other one is OS based approach. Now Now, what is this super loop based approach? The name itself indicates super loop. Okay, we'll come to this point very soon by a good example. Now, what it is? This super loop based approach firmware development is developed where the system does not require a deterministic approach and they are not mission critical. Okay, and the embedded systems are still acceptable even if the deadlines are missed. So which are those examples? Can you give me a few examples here? So which are those examples where I can use super loop model based approach for developing a embedded firmware design? So any ideas? Or definitely you can consider your electronic toy, right? Where this is one such embedded system which is a non mission critical and which is even if it misses the deadline, which is very good to accept, right? The design is comfortably okay for us, right? And even you consider the previous example in the class we have discussed the telephone booth. So that is also maybe what happens. Probably we may not able to give a call. That's it. Will it going to give any harmful? Nothing. So even you use the super loop model based approach to develop a telephone booth, right? So these are the few examples where the approach that's what we call it as a conventional procedural based firmware. Okay. Now, how actually the development of this firmware execution flow takes place? Okay, the point is very clear. First, you need to configure the common parameters, like you need to initialize the memory, initialize the registers, all these points to be taken care while developing the firmware. So unless and until it is not possible to develop if you don't initialize this, then next, okay, I just say that execute the first task, execute the second task, next, and so on and so forth. Execute till last task. Now, for this, you can consider, see, execution of these tasks. Consider an example of the vending machine wherein the task A, task B, or state A, state B, state C can be considered as an individual task. So because you will be checking in each state, you will be checking whether the state has have some reasonable valid input or not. See, until and unless the user enter some coin to the vending machine, so it will not move to state B, right? So which is nothing but I call this state B as a second task, right? So if it is true, then the program should execute state B or it should move to state B. Moving from state A to state B is nothing but execution of or moving from task 1 to task 2. That's it. So that's where all these tasks will be executed sequentially. Definitely here I cannot execute all of the states, like different state A, B, C cannot be executed concurrently, right? We have to wait for the input coin, then only I will move for state B. In the state B, user may enter, if you properly remember, user may enter for tea, okay, or user may enter coffee, right? So there are, once again, I may execute state C or state D based upon the input once, and that's where like a sequential flow of executions sequential flow of execution takes place in such algorithms, right? So that's what in a firmware execution flow, make sure that initially you have initialized all the hardware components like memory, registers, whatever. So then you start executing. first step, second step, and third step, and finally, yes, if you remember the state diagrams, at the end you will back to, or you will come back to the initial state somehow, right? You must. That's how it ends the flow of execution. Hence, the last step is jump back to first task and follow the same flow. The best example models are vending machine example is the best model, or seat belt wearing, fastening of the seat belt is the best example, or even if you consider the telephone booth exchange is also a best, very best example, coin booth. So all these, if you remember the same flow we try to follow, that has to be imparted as a firmware flow. So that software has to be developed, right? The development of that particular software, maybe you will be using assembly level language or C language, but the task has to be executed by using some programming language itself. So if you want to follow, that is what the firmware execution flow we call it as. Now if I develop the same thing in so that's what, like, the best example is electronics video gaming containing keyboard and display. I already gave a sufficient example with respect to this. Now using the C code, how you visualize this particular C free firmware programming, right? Very simple and straightforward, right? The first thing, you need to be in a loop, but initialization and configuration of the memories. Now next, task 1, task 2, task 3, and task n execution. And as I told you, you need to follow this flow continuously for indefinite time. These points must be executed. Hence it is called as super loop. What do you mean by loop? It has to be in a loop. It must not come out of the loop. It has to be executing the loop statement itself throughout the till a machine get damaged. So right, so that's what I'll do. I'll put this in a loop which is called an infinite loop, which will be executing all the time, 365 days, 24/7, 365 days. Hence I put this all the tasks to be executed in a while loop, under while loop. So okay, so this is how I try to visualize the how embedded firmware is developed, okay, using C programming as a C. Hence the name, it is called as super loop based approach. Okay, and the one more important point that you have to remember, or you must remember here, is the hardware. So maybe you consider the vending machine, or maybe you consider the electronic toy, or the maybe you also consider the telephone coin booth. So all these, we don't see any of the operating system. Okay, it does not contain operating system, and such hardwares, such embedded systems, we call it as standalone. What is this? The word you have to, or you must remember, you will come across in your life many a times. Standalone devices. What do you mean by standalone devices? The devices which does not consist of operating system, but they are embedded systems. Example, you take a vending machine, you can take a toy automatic coffee vending machine, or the booth, coin booth, or electronic toy, any such kind of example you remember. Now earlier days we have an mobile phone called 1100, if you remember, like 1100 by Nokia phones, and even Motorola. There was mobile phones from Motorola. All these mobile phones were not having embedded OS. They were having only firmware which works with according to the instruction, because all the time it will be in a super loop mesh. So Hence, all those are a very good example for these firmware visualization of C code and the super loop based approach for firmware development. And those engineers, we call them as a device driver engineers or firmware design engineers as such. The second approach. So this is the second approach. The second approach is embedded operating system, OS based approach. So in the previous example to this example, the only difference is, so in a super loop based approach, there was no OS, and here there is a OS. So you can take an example of 1100 mobile phone. For example, like a super loop based approach, you can consider the best example like Android based OS phones or Apple based phones. So for embedded operating system based approach. Now coming to this, there are two types of operating system mainly. One is general purpose operating system. Second one is real time operating system. Now let us understand the difference between general purpose operating system and real time operating system. The name itself says that the operating system is general purpose, and here the operating system is real time. Now, whatever you are trying to understand in your OS subject, operating system subject, so those operating system will be having some algorithms, and accordingly they are executing the many of the applications. Why do we require OS? The first point, why do we require OS? So I'll just give you a brief, all might be knowing, but for my better explanation, it helps me to go further. That's it. So this is your basic or fundamental hardware, maybe a processor, right, or maybe a controller, anything you consider. Now let me see, without processor you cannot imagine a controller, right? So let me take a very basic like processor, and there is a one more person called memory. Who is he? He is nothing but your random access memory, RAM. Okay, so above here there is a person called OS. Okay, now above this OS I have a multiple applications which I want to run. Applications ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಅನ್ಕೊಳ್ರಿ, you can call them as a task, you can call them as a process, anything. Okay, now I have a like one file I want to execute, like I want to open a Word document. Okay, and another, maybe I want to open my Chrome. Okay, I just want to running an application. See, application, see, Word document or MS Word is a one application, Chrome is another application. Simultaneously I am trying to connect my hardware like laptop to a printer. Okay, now apart from that I am also trying to connect with another cable. I am trying to connect my mobile phone. See how many applications are to be run by this processor, right? So this CPU must execute one Word file. Simultaneously I am trying to open my Google Chrome for internet browsing. Simultaneously I am trying to print some XYZ document. Simultaneously I connected my mobile phone. See, huge number of applications, multiple applications, to be clear, multiple tasks, multiple job are to be handled by the processor. Now he has to manage, because this man can access, say for example, he is of size 4 GB, out of which out of which first almost 50% of his memory he has to allocate the OS, because OS is also nothing but a C programming. He is not something like a man of without having a leg and eyes or wings, something like. Right? He must also have a definite C programming. He is also man who is of C programming. Chrome is also man who is having a C programming. Printer driver is also a C programming. Everything that is handled by the processor, it is nothing but a programming language. ಸಿ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮಿಂಗ್ ಅಂತನಾದ್ರು ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ರಿ, ಅಥವಾ C++ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮಿಂಗ್ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಬರ್ದಿರ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ರಿ, ಜಾವಾನಾದ್ರು ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ರಿ, ವಾಟ್ ಎವರ್ ಇಟ್ ಮೇ ಬಿ. So ultimately it has to run the programming. Now ultimately, as I told you, OS is also a bunch of C programming, and I need to allocate some space to execute. That is what initially when you start your laptops or when you start your machines, it takes some timing, and that is what we call it as basic input output system, BIOS system. It takes some time to load all the OS to RAM. Then now OS become a manager here. What is his job? He will try to allocate. Yes, word, you come first and you go to processor, execute. Suppose if there is a algorithm called round robin algorithm, RR, so probably after delta time unit, so what he does, he will shift. Okay, process 1, your allocated job is done, I will call a process 2. Yes, Chrome, you come and go to processor and execute your process. Okay, and he will also giving a delta amount of time, because we have a scheduling algorithm called round robin scheduling algorithm. Yes, after few time of delta, yes, again OS takes the printer. Yes, printer, you come and you execute. If he is having a higher priority job, if P3, let me assume P3 is the process which is supposed to be executed for printer. If he is having a higher priority job, then based on the priority, then he will try to avoid P1 and P2. So please hold on for a time. There is another job called P3 which is having a higher priority. Let me allocate the job for that. So what it does, OS is called as a resource manager. Why? What type of resource he is allocating? The first resource that is allocating is, for a printer there is a program, he will try to allocate some space in the memory. First space, what is that? It is nothing but a resource. What type of resource? Memory is the resource here. Now in turn, this memory is getting executed. This piece of code that is present RAM, that is trying to execute it by the processor, right? So this is what we call it as OS is a resource manager. OS is the process allocator, resource allocator, right? All these definitions we will give. Okay, this is the job of OS. Ultimately, why? What was my intention? You need to understand why operating system is required. Because if there is if without OS, assume that there is no OS, how the processor has to execute? There must be someone, watchman, right? There must be some watchman. Yes, you come outside, kind of doing some jobs, right? So this is nothing but a VI. This is nothing but something like, you call him as some prime ministerial position or CM seat. A CPU is something like a brain or a kind of big boss. Now OS is something like a watchman who allocates, like who has to get into the cabin of prime minister or a CM, or that kind of job will be doing by the operating system. So now when there are multiple job, or when there are multiple tasks to be handled, now there exists a operating system. Now we have two types of operating system. In that itself, we have a differentiation between the operating system, which are time deterministic and which are time critical and mission critical. Operating system is at one side, and non-time deterministic, non-mission critical kind of operating system at one side. Now you can able to visualize which is time critical out of these two. Yes, of course, RTOS is a time critical and GPOS is a non-time critical. The best example for GPOS is your Windows operating system, that what right now you will be using in your laptops or in our PCs. So Windows is one general purpose applications, Unix, Linux and Mac OS, all these we call them as a general purpose operating system. The reason is because even if there is a little bit delay, say for example, you might be observing when I try to open up my PPTs, so it takes a little time to load, right? That delay is sufficiently okay because you are also bearable that particular delay and me also bearable. There is no such time critical applications as such, right? So that's how general purpose operating system are not that time critical, and even if they become late execution, it's still okay. So that's where and one of the GPOS that we developed in embedded system, which are not time critical, like a patient monitoring system and ECG. You can take a best example. Even ECG, little bit delay is okay normally, right? We don't invest more amount of time there, but for angiogram kind of applications, definitely the little ahead and advanced operating system we try to inculcate in such things. And these are the Microsoft Windows embedded is the OS, just like you how you call that Windows 8, Windows 10 kind of operating system, right? So Microsoft Windows embedded 8.1 is an operating system, is a general purpose operating system which are developed to kind of applications like handhelds, point of sales terminals and patient monitoring systems, etc. Okay, these are the few examples. Now real-time operating system contains real-time kernel responsible for performing preemptive multitasking, scheduler for scheduling the task, multiple threads. So all these to be handled, all these concepts are to be handled by the real-time operating system. Preemptive multitasking. What do you mean by preemptive? As in the previous example I told you, so I allocate the task one by one to my processor, but after few time I feel that there is a one job printer which is having a higher priority. As in that example I took it as a P3 process, and in such cases assume that P2 is already into the CPU executing processor is executing P2 process. Now this has to be withheld for few moments and I need to allocate the P3 process. So I am trying to preempt, I am trying to stop the P2 execution abruptly, and I am allocating the P3 process to processor since it is a higher priority job. So that is what we call it as a preemptive that exists in a multitasking system. So there were a multitasking P1, P2, P3, so on, right? So again, scheduler for scheduling the task or scheduling algorithms you might have learned like RR algorithm and first come first serve basis algorithm, right? So these are different scheduling algorithms that will be inculcated in my RTOS. Even these kind of algorithms is present in GPOS also. Don't think that these algorithms are not present in a GPOS, but the development of the algorithm will be different. The development algorithm will be taken in case of GPOS. We don't take if it works, algorithm works fine, that is fine. We don't take care about the execution timing, time deterministic approach. But in RTOS, the same algorithm will be running, but more of with time perspective. Okay, so the next topic is about embedded firmware development languages. So we'll take up this small topic and we'll done for the class. We'll wind up the class this session. A very important point. Now coming to the which are the development languages that are present to write an embedded firmware. What do you mean by this? So we have our languages like assembly language first, and of course high level language we have. Let us don't touch here. We'll try to understand. First point, assembly language based development. What do you mean by assembly level language? So you know that assembly level language programming is of the form having a machine code, or which is nothing but we also relate like machine level language almost, which are associated with the data using an assembler. So assembly level language programming is nothing but writing a task for particular the processor specific. Now we take a little example how actually like assembly level language .asm you have already written in your you have already learned in the same semester with respect to ARM processor as well as a microcontroller 8051. ASM, I need to convert this to machine level language. How do we convert? Oh, that is what we try to understand. This process we will try to understand in next two slides. So how do I convert assembly level language to machine level language? What do you mean by machine level language? Machine level language is purely binary. So how do we try to understand this with binary language? How we convert this? That's where taken a simple example here. So 8051, let us assume that move a comma immediate data 30. I am trying to load a accumulator with a content of 30. How do you convert this to machine level language? Now here move a, we call it as a opcode. It is operation code. What operation we are trying to do? We are trying to move we are trying to perform a operation here. See here, so you need to understand this. Move a is a opcode, op code. Here we have a two meanings. One is code. Code is nothing but a program kind of thing. What is op? Op is nothing but a operation. What operation that it does, this code does, it is movement. So we have another like add a. What is add? Add is the operation, right? Jump is a operation. So all these thing, move a, jump, and compare CMP and RSI, all these things we call them as a opcode in assembly level language. And what is this operand? On which operand this opcode has to perform the job. Okay. Now individual opcode will be developed. There is a separate table called vector table. So now each of this will be having hex value. So I have a move a. So move a will be having its similarly add. So these are all the instructions. I need to be stored in my ROM, right? All these values. Okay. Now what is this? It is 70H. How do we get, sir? So that already written by the embedded software design engineers. Now add will be having some equivalent value 80H. Let us assume. Okay. Now whenever I say move a, it will search for the lookup table, okay, or we call it as a vector table, and it go to that particular table and it will fetch its equivalent hexadecimal value. Okay, now hexadecimal value for move a is 70. Now this 70 is converted in terms of binary language or machine level language. How do you convert? So since it is 8051 is a 8-bit microcontroller, you know already. So which means that the data handling capability is 8-bit, the address handling capability is 8-bit, which means that, so now 70 is a data. We processor don't know whether it is an instruction or not, nothing. It consider each and everything is a data itself. Now I can convert this into 8-bit data. How do you convert this into 8-bit data? The hexadecimal have to be converted into 8-bit binary value. How do you perform this? So this is going to be performed as 0111. Okay, because I need to split this into 4 and 4 as I'm converting this to hexadecimal value. So first thing is I convert this into hexadecimal value to binary and this to binary. So that is 01110000. That's what I wrote here. This is also in green color. This is also in green color. So that is 0111 0. I'm sorry, this is supposed to be 0 itself. I'm sorry. This is I'm sorry, move A, the equivalent value is 74H. I'm sorry, not 70H, it is 74H. Okay, now the 74H is, if I convert, so this is 7, okay, this is 4. Okay, now move A is converted to equivalent machine level language. And what is 30? 30 is a decimal value, right? 30 is a decimal value, and this decimal value had to be converted into binary. Very easy and straightforward. Look at this. So this is 16th bit, 16, 8, 4, 2, 1, right? 16 plus 8 is 24, 24 plus 4 is 28, 28 plus 2 is 30. So this binary is equivalent to 30 in decimal. Fine. So now it try to execute the, ultimately processor, a CPU will receive. So your instruction was assembly level language to perform move A comma 32 30, sorry, move A comma 30, and this has been decoded and it is given to processor as 0111 0100 followed by 0001 1110. So all these actually performed by whom? How it is possible? So that's what I told you. User will write only this instruction, but how I can, there must be a small piece of code again to convert move A comma 30 into this machine level language, right? Who will perform this? That is what I told you. The embedded firmware designers will be writing a non-alterable program, and this will be resided in our ROM. I hope this concept is clear to you. Okay, this is how we try to convert the, so this actually the job of embedded design engineers who are in the field of firmware. Okay, so that's where each line of in the assembly level language is going to be split into 4 fields. Actually, when we try to develop firmware, we try to develop this format. Actually, one is label and another one is opcode, operand, comments. Okay, so you taking an example, you understand, like see here, I'm trying to generate a simple delay, which is nothing but execution of for loop in your C programming. So what I am trying to do, I am trying to count from 255 to till it reaches 0, right? So what is this? So which has to be in a loop, right? So which means that I need to provide the address. So I write move R0 comma 255. 255 is loaded to R0. So how the machine executes or how the processor executes? So equivalent machine level language will be there for move R0 hexadecimal value. That hexadecimal value will be converted into machine level or binary, and 255 is a decimal number. It is easily converted into 8-bit binary number. Now DJNZ, decrement jump on no 0. So 255 is decremented by 1 and it check whether or not is reached to 0 or not. If not, where it has to be sent? I need to give the address, right? So here every program, this is residing in a memory and individual address will be there, right? So I cannot look at in which memory it is. User, for an embedded engineer, it is very difficult to go and see the hardware address and try to write the actual address. Now what we do, instead we try to use a labels, and I use the same label here also. Automatically the program control will switch if it is not 0. Anyways, I am trying to provide the address here because it is a jump instruction. Jump instruction always looking for the address. Now it will fetch this address. We don't know what address it is. It is specified in terms of English name called delay, and it will search this and go back here. So which means that the label is used what for what purpose? Just to using as a address locator. Okay, so once it completes the complete decrement operation from 255 to 0, it will come out of the loop. So this is one simple example, and there we have each instruction will be having a comment. So this is how a systematic assembly level programming language we try to develop. We should always leave the space for label first, and then opcode, and then operand, and then comment. So that's where in Keel you might have observed that I leave the space. Always I asked you to leave the space, then you start a programming like area and as such, vagera such, right? So if I use the move instruction, I used to write move or not, comma something like. I used to leave this space. For what purpose? Because the compiler is developed, the first space it understand as label. If I write move here, it won't take it as an instruction. Instead, it consider this as a address locator. Oh, that is what think why we used to leave the space and why we try to write it here, because this is the space where it is reserved for opcode. Okay, so this is another example of such. So here org100h, what is this org100h? So this we will discuss in the next class, and I hope till here you understood. So from tomorrow I will give you the small assignment why we use this org. What do you mean by org? So definitely here it is not a label, right? Let us try to understand this in a next class. If you have any doubts, please let me know. I'll come back to chat room.